Tremendous here. Got another book review here for you. This is book 3 of the Starships and Apocalypse series. This is volume 2 of the series, Time and Terrors. It is still written by Andrew P. McGregor. I still know him, I still talk to him, but again, I'm still not going to allow it to taint or flavor or change my reviews in any way, shape, or form. All about integrity, and I'm going to stick to that. This is still science fiction. It was still published April 4th, 2021, and this story is exactly 18 pages long. I got a lot to talk about, so let's get to it. So there's going to be spoilers from now on. I've decided I'm not going to do the spoiler-free review anymore because honestly it was hard to keep to that, and I feel like it kind of convolutes it. If you don't like spoilers, check out the book, read it yourself, come back, and then watch it. But if not, I mean, just, I don't know, pause when you think I'm going to do a spoiler, but I kind of like getting into the spoiler-filled review right away because it lets me really talk about the meat of the whole story, and it's really hard to talk around spoilers with short stories. So here we go. The overview for this one is there's a team, a Captain Nathan Warner, Rachel Patel, who I didn't find a rank for. Maybe I just missed it. I did look. I never saw one. It's probably in there, and I missed it, maybe. But, and then, of course, we have Drone Commander Olivia Storm. And the plot is this team is in a pocket universe looking for a new planet for humanity because something called the Plague is invading humanity's solar system in the regular, normal universe, in our universe. And they were sent here, as a desperation thing to try to find somewhere for us to go and live to get away from the Plague. It's an interesting concept. It's definitely, it definitely caught my attention. It definitely raised a ton of questions that were never answered, but it's a short story, it's only 18 pages long, so I just figured it'd be a really good little adventure, and it's definitely an adventure. But we'll get to that in just a minute. Already been over the cover. This is really good. Editing. The editing was fine. There was no grammatical or spelling mistakes or anything like that, but I did find what I think is a continuity error and definitely a naming convention error and a time error, stuff like that. So it kind of messed with the story flow a little bit. It tripped me up a few times. I had to go back, reread, try to understand, was it my reading comprehension skills that were screwing up, or was it the actual story? And this might be ego, but I'm going to mostly blame the story on this one. So this one maybe needs to be looked at again by the author and the editor. I know I'm probably on the couch for that. The editor, full disclosure, is my wife. So there's every chance in the world I'm in a lot of trouble for saying this, but again, integrity rules. But the overall feel of the story is great. This is definitely this author's story. You can feel it. It's his voice, and it's fun. It's a good one, but it was not without issues. What were those issues? Well, I'm glad you asked. So in the beginning of the story, Rachel Patel is just getting back onto the ship because they seem to be running from a planet that they were exploring, hoping to find some sort of super heavy minerals or something like that they could use for fuel. And remember that because I'm going to get to that in just a second. Because critical elements and stuff like that are useful. But they were looking for them because their ship is a research vessel, and but she had to rush and get back because the sun in the solar system they were in is going supernova, and it kind of caught them by surprise. We'll get to that in just a second. Well, no, actually, we'll get to it right now because there is a short discussion about how the laws of physics don't work like we expect them to. The pocket universe has different rules than the normal one, which is cool. I like that. It gives the author a lot of leeway to explain why certain things work the way they do when in our reality, our universe, it wouldn't work that way. So I like that. It explains anything that would be like, nope, that's wrong, that's not happening. Oh, no, pocket universe, laws of physics work different. It's a 2-sentence fix to a future problem, and I like that a lot. But Rachel asked some really good questions to the captain and Commander Olivia Storm, Drone Commander Olivia Storm. But it's weird because she goes, okay, so how are the rules here different than in our world? Because I need to know what the programming of the computer is so that we don't keep getting surprise supernovas as we're flying around trying to find a place to save humanity. And also, you find out that a few seconds in our time equals millions of years inside the pocket dimension. And it sounds like they've only been there for a few months. So a few seconds, a few milliseconds have gone on in the normal universe compared to the amount of time that they've spent in the pocket universe. And I reread that 3 times just to make sure that I understood it. So, I'm going to get to that in a minute because this feels like a huge plot hole, story loophole, timing error. There's a huge issue with that, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. But as she's asking all these questions, the captain gets distracted by something on his screen, and he's like, yeah, great questions. Let's never talk about this again. And I don't know if that was the author trying to be funny or just like, yeah, I know it's weird, but that's just the way it is. But it really felt like a kick in the teeth. It didn't come off as comedy. It almost came off like, I know I've written myself into a corner, just shut up about it. But before anything else can be said, because it honestly seems like Rachel's going to be like, what do you mean don't talk about it anymore? He looks at the view screen and he sees something, and it turns out to be their enemy, this plague ship. And I'm not sure if it's a spaceship or some sort of like living cell. It's described as like a white blood cell coming at them, like a big fried egg or something with wings and tentacles. It's actually, and this author does this beautifully, he creates alien and alien life, and it's incredible. Like his imagination to create these things, it surpasses even mine. I love it. I'm always curious to see what he's going to create and how it works. And so this fried egg looking cell ship organism, whatever it is, with wings and tentacles and just, it's menacing. It's the fried egg of doom, and I love it. And the fact that he calls it a plague ship, it made me imagine like a white cell, like a white blood cell that fights infections, which kind of gives the connotation that like that humans are an infection. I really like this part of the story and the plague like entity, the alien that he created. Very, very cool. Around this time, on page 20 and 21, on page all the way up to page 20, the name of the ship was the Venandi. And then on page 21, and explicitly, I don't know why, all of a sudden it becomes the Vivendi. And it stays that way until the end of the story. This is an editing error. I'm willing to sleep on the couch for this one, but this should have been caught. This is a very obvious change. I caught it right away, and I went back and checked a couple of times. There's no shift between these two words. There's no explanation. There's not another ship out there. The name of their ship changes semi-drastically from Venandi to Vivendi. Personally, I like Vivendi more, but it's not what we started with. That's a continuity error. That's definitely an editing error. That should have been caught. So anyway, the ladies, the captain's at his captain's chair, and the ladies have to go and link up into the ship in order to fight this plague monster thing that's coming after them. And that's what they go to do. And they link in like it's the Matrix, and Rachel gets like a targeting reticle and stuff like that, and Olivia starts running all the drones, which is pretty cool. The problem is this ship was not really created for combat, and the author lets you know that. It's a research and exploration vessel. The plasma gun that they're going to use was really just kind of used to blow up asteroids so they could see what was inside of them. And the laser drones that she's going after them, they help target the plasma gun, but I mean, they've got some lasers on them, but it's more like mining lasers rather than combat lasers, so they're really not going to do a whole lot other than help Rachel hit her target. So she starts firing the plasma gun at them, and it's cool because the ship makes canisters to hold the plasma, and the plasma comes off as like exhaust from their engines, so they got to be like full throttle the entire time, and that's really cool. The faster they go, the more ammo they have. It's a byproduct. I like that a lot. I think that's very cool. But hang on, we're getting to that. I do have a question about it, and it is nitpicky. I'll be the first to admit that, but it's still something I want to ask and point out. So at this point, Rachel links up to the ship, and she immediately starts getting a headache. And it's weird because it feels like a chunk of the story got removed here, but this part of it wasn't adapted to fit the edit. Because she's like, it's literally been one paragraph. She just linked up to the ship and she's getting all the targeting reticles set up in her mind and everything like that. It's very cool. And then she starts complaining about a headache forming because she's been linked up to the ship for so long. And it's like, you've been hooked up to the ship for less than a minute. What do you mean? So it feels like either a continuity error or maybe a big chunk of the story was edited out and they just missed fixing this. I'm not sure, but it was definitely an issue, and it was a continuity error, and that bothers me. Rachel starts firing plasma cannon rounds at the Plague like it's a minigun. Super cool, just dum 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 dum. At one point, I thought it was a little corny. As she's shooting at it, she's like, boom, boom, boom. Nobody would do that. I'm sorry. Unless it was a video game. No, she's fighting for her life. She's terrified. She's not gonna do that. She would scream, die. She would swear. There is no swearing in this, by the way, which I can deal with. But this thing is firing plasma cannon rounds at the Plague monster, and when it explodes, the author describes that the explosions are basically fusion bomb level explosions, and they're causing like pock marks on this thing. Like, it's doing a little bit of damage. She blows a wing off. She causes some craters on there and stuff. It's on fire a little bit, which is curious how it's on fire in space, but okay, it is. They do travel through a cloud. It's got some gases and stuff like that, so we'll say it's possible. But huge explosions, massive, devastating explosions, and you're doing minimal damage to this thing. So the crew is a little screwed here. And then something happens that kind of throws me off again. So they're in this big gas cloud, and it's dense. The author goes out of his way to say that eventually these gases could form like a cloud giant type planet. So okay, there's a lot of resources. It's a dense, thick cloud full of materials that they can use. So they fly through it, open their vents to suck in a bunch of it to make fuel, materials for canisters, and more ammo. And it's curious because, number one, fuel was something that they are going to have an issue with in a minute. Second, they were just on a planet hoping to find materials and certain elements in order to create, new drones and all this stuff. But if you could just suck it up from a gas giant, why is that a big deal? I mean, they're relatively abundant. They just literally ran into one during a firefight. And the ammo was supposed to be made as a byproduct of the engines stuff. Now all of a sudden they need to suck it up in order to make more ammo. Maybe it's a fuel thing and that's the way it is. But it just kind of threw me off because all of a sudden it felt like the plasma wasn't fuel, or wasn't created by the exhaust of their engines. Now it was something they needed to suck up and create inside the ship. It was a weird continuity error, little plot hole there, and I would really like it if the author would go back and just kind of clarify that a little bit. Just because I went back and read it a couple of times just to see if maybe it was on me, but it's very confusing. And it's just, where's the ammo coming from? Is it like in the glove box? Is it something from the engines? Or do they have to suck up stuff from space in order for the ship to make it real quick? All of them are cool answers. Hey, if it worked for Spaceballs, it could be in the dashboard. I don't want to hear it. But if it's coming from the engine, if it's something they have to create by using materials they salvaged throughout their adventure, that's fine. But pick one and stick to it, or at least explain why there's multiple avenues towards it. So after they get all the vapors sucked in and they're at full capacity, Rachel goes minigun, like an A-10, firing its huge gun at the Plague thing, who has caught up to them very quick. It's bigger, faster, and a lot more durable than they are, and they're shooting relatively point-blank fusion bombs into this thing, and it's not even really slowing it down. Meanwhile, Rachel is going all out doing this. The experience and the strain it's putting on her is starting to juice her insides. The speeds that they're going at and the evasive maneuvers have collapsed her lungs. She's cracked a tooth. I think she swallows her tongue at some point and starts gagging on it. And she's got a massive headache, basically nosebleeds. It's juicing her guts. And it's not good. She's dying, basically. But, she's also fighting for her life. The author does a great job explaining all that and putting in a sense of turmoil and stress and just like the thrill of, are they going to get away? Are they all going to die? It's a short story, could go either way. So it was very interesting. And there's one point where she like cracks a nail, and for some reason that just went all over me, like made my skin crawl. But yeah, it seems like a weird byproduct for an intended use of their technology. Yeah, you got to link into the ship in order to fire this gun. Yeah, but doesn't that mean that my brain will get juiced at some point? Well, I mean, you only shoot it like 3 times and you'll get a headache. I'm sure it'll be fine. Well, what if it's a prolonged fight? Oh no, you don't want that. Oh God, no. This is like putting a blender inside your face. You just don't want to do that. But it's the gun that we got to use to defend ourselves. I know. Good luck. It just seems foolish to me. I don't know. It feels like there should be a better explanation of why that's going on. Maybe the ship takes damage and they're getting some sort of negative energy feedback, which is causing the damage to Rachel's body. But for the after effect of being linked up to this thing, the side effect for being linked up to the gun and fighting for your life, which is the intended use of this, even if it is just to shoot at an asteroid, I don't want to know that I'm going to have a headache that every time I have to study an asteroid or blow it apart. It seems foolish to me. It seems like a really huge design flaw, and the fact that they would go into this pocket universe with some sort of technology like that needs to be explained. Maybe the ship is malfunctioning, maybe it took some damage, maybe it was built by the lowest bidder. I don't know, but just making it that's a design choice. Somebody should fire that engineer. So anyway, there's a lull in the fighting, and Rachel disconnects from the ship and immediately gets assaulted by the pain, which is very cool that the author acknowledged the fact that Rachel is not a machine. While she was linked up, she was only semi-aware of the pain, but once she linked out, her body was like, hey, we're dying. She freaks out, starts screaming, and passes out from the pain. She wakes up and she's basically on a hospital bed or a med bed or whatever on the ship. They're somehow hiding in the space clouds from the plague ship or the plague entity, whatever it is. They're inside this dense cloud. The author does something really cool here and states that it's like 5 psi outside, which is just enough for sound to travel. Not well, but it would still travel, and they're not sure how well the plague demon thing can hear, so they're whispering. They're being really quiet. And I remember thinking when I was reading this, well, if they're worried about that, which it seems a little ridiculous because 5 psi is enough for sound to travel, but we're talking kilometers of distance between them and him. I mean, you could be in Earth atmosphere and scream at the top of your lungs, and something kilometers away isn't going to hear you. So I don't know. That bothered me a little bit, but I get it. It was more of that building up, suspense and everything like that. So I could forgive it, but it did eat at me a little bit. But the plague thing, of course, can hear them and eventually finds them because they talk a little bit too loud. And it bothered me there too because it's like, why don't they just text? Like, we have that now. Why wouldn't they just send each other messages or write it down? And then a little bit later, they're fighting this thing, and while they're fighting this thing, the captain sends a mental text message to Rachel that says, when I tell you, stop firing the cannon. So they could text the whole time. All they had to do is link into the ship, which they did anyway, and they could text each other. So again, it's a smaller plot hole. I understand it's nitpicky, but if you're trying to avoid the super death plague demon thing, and you can text, and you're worried about, sound traveling kilometers to hit this thing, it just feels like the pen and paper route would be the way to go. I mean, Rachel been bleeding a lot. They could draw it in blood, like yes, no, quiet. But no, they chose to talk, even though they knew they had to be quiet, and it caught this thing's attention. So as they're running from this thing and shooting more basically useless airsoft pellets in plasma form at this thing, Olivia comes up with an idea to throw an antimatter fuel cell at it. They've only got like 3 fuel cells, but again, why is this such a big deal? Because a minute ago, they sucked up a bunch of stuff from a gas giant that they're currently still in that allowed them to make more fuel and ammo and all this stuff. So I don't again, it feels like a plot hole, or I'm misunderstanding something. Either is possible. Please click the link below, get the book, read the story, come back and tell me what you think. I'd love to have a conversation about it. So anyway, they have a debate about the antimatter fuel cell, because if they fire it off at this thing, it'd be a much bigger explosion than the plasma stuff, but then they'd only have 2 fuel tanks left, antimatter fuel tanks left, and that might not be enough for them to get home, or whatever it is they're going to do, and they could be stranded in the middle of this pocket universe forever and ever and ever. But at the same time, if they don't do it, the plague demon's going to get them and kill them, making forever and ever and ever shorter, but they're dead. So again, it seemed like a weird manufactured issue. I wish that something else had been chosen, or at least another explanation as to why they couldn't do that, or why this particular fuel was not the same as what their engine used, or something. But bottom line, they end up firing the antimatter fuel canister at the cell thing through a drone. Basically, the drone grabs it and runs off. And here's another small issue. The drone runs off with the antimatter cell, and the cell demon that's been going after them this whole time immediately breaks off to go after the drone that's kind of running away from it a little bit. If they could do that, why not just send out a whole bunch of drones and then run away from the plague demon thing? Like, that seems to be a better idea if you're so worried about your antimatter bomb fuel stuff. But that's not what ended up happening. The cell run, or the plague thing runs after the drone with the antimatter stuff, eats it, and the thing explodes. And it's a big explosion. I mean, yeah, go figure. It doesn't kill the stupid thing though. This plague demon cell thing is still not dead. It's hurt real bad. It looks like a struck match, but it's still turning and coming after them, and it's doing its gribbly thing, like, I'm gonna get you. It's basically Jason Voorhees in space, which is cool, but it's like, how did these things not completely wipe us out already? Like, we're throwing fusion bombs at them like out of a minigun, and it's barely hurting the thing. They just fired an antimatter fuel cell bomb at it, which it ingested and exploded while inside of it. And yeah, it really hurt it, but it was still like coming after you. It wasn't dead. It was still a huge threat. It's like, what the heck? But they end up they have the conversation as this thing's like crawling towards them in space. The plasma gun is overheated and can't be fired anymore. They don't want to do another antimatter fuel cell because then they only have one. And again, it feels like manufactured suspense. It feels like a plot hole, but I don't know. I'll have to ask the author about that one, because it does bother me a lot. And what they end up deciding to do is detaching their pocket drive, which is what got them here, and it's their only way home, and firing it at the cell, and basically not destroying it, but sending it somewhere else in the normal universe so that they can live. But trapping them inside the pocket universe forever, therefore they might as well be dead because they can't go back and save humanity. But they decide that humanity is probably already gone anyway, because the cell is here, and if the cell is here, that means that it's already taken over our solar system, because the pocket device entryway or whatever it was on Titan, which I believe is a moon around Saturn or Neptune or Jupiter, one of the two. I'm gonna go with Saturn. I'm not really sure. But anyway, I don't know, maybe Neptune? I have no idea. It's one of the moons that we think might be able to sustain life near us or close to it. Anyway, they end up dropping off the pocket drive, and of course the cell runs right to it and gets transported out of the pocket universe. And my thing is, if that's the case, and they've got Titan and they can send cells, the plague cells here, why won't they just send another one? Like, why was the pocket drive thing the answer? And why not just jump back? You have the pocket drive. At least jump back, see for sure, because again, in the beginning it said every second in the real world was millions of years in the pocket dimension. So how they've only been there for a few months, which is a fraction of a second in the real world, how is the alien there already and they didn't know about it? Like, seconds have passed at the maximum, a few minutes, we'll say, according to what was said at the beginning of the story, and it just doesn't mesh. There's a continuity error here, big time. and it needs to be rewritten. It needs to be revised because that's a huge, huge issue. If time works differently here and it's infinitely faster here than it is in the real world, and only seconds go by for millions of years here, then the only way that that cell could possibly have been there after a few months of exploring for them is if it was already entering into the pocket universe as they entered it, and it was less than a second behind them, which you would think they would know. Hey, they are actually in our solar system and they are invading Titan and they are about to go through. I mean, it would be literal fractions of a second behind them. So that really bothered me a lot. That was actually a rather large loophole for me, or a plot hole, and I didn't like that at all. I felt that that was a problem. So anyway, they accept that Earth is gone. They're the last living humans probably in all of existence. Olivia, who had family and stuff like that, she goes into a deep mourning. Totally understandable, totally reasonable. Captain Warner and Rachel just kind of accept it, and after a week, they find another planet that could probably sustain their life. It's hot enough to fry an egg, but hey, it's just a planet called Arizona. Why not? And they head over to the planet to colonize it. Well, to check it out, see if it's got anything that they could use, they could live there, and if it would sustain life and they could start a colony there. For some reason, they have a ton of DNA with them to repopulate, the humanity with on this pocket planet, which seems weird to me. Why would they bring a whole bunch of DNA samples with them on this scout ship? I get it. They went with the happy ending, but it doesn't make any sense. This is a ship that was kitted out poorly to go and explain a pocket universe, and it can make its own stuff. It scavenges stuff so that it can make things. But also, just in case, they brought a whole bunch of DNA so that they could repopulate humanity and make clones and stuff of themselves with. It's an odd thing to kind of shoehorn in there at the end, and I didn't like it. I didn't like that at all. It felt cheap. It felt unearned. And if that was the case, if they brought DNA to to create the human population on planets out here, then why did they need the return drive home? Why was it even consideration? Because, sorry, we don't need you. We have your DNA. We'll just start a new colony out here. It's been real, Earth. Good luck. They even go so far as to say that given enough time, they could possibly create another pocket drive. If they're so easy to make that the ship could manufacture it, why wasn't Earth mass producing these things so that multiple ships could just go to this pocket dimension and start over or find something elsewhere? It also seemed like there wasn't a return point of entry. They didn't know where they sent the alien after they fired it back, so why not just weaponize the pocket drives? If they work so well, they fire them off at these plague things, they could be somewhere else in the universe. And the universe is really, really big. So unless the plague drone things have, warp 54 or something like that, they're not going to be able to come back real quick. It's a lot of questions at the end that just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And maybe I'm digging too deep, maybe I'm trying too hard, but it just felt like a lot of plot holes to me. And honestly, and not to be crude or anything like that, I expect more from this author. He's better than this. So in the end, it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard to give this one its rating. I knew exactly what it was going to be as soon as I was done rating it. And yeah, no problem, no issue with this in my mind. This is a 3 out of 5 star story because it's not terrible. I didn't hate it. I did not like it, but I didn't really like it either. It was directly in the middle. It was on that razor's edge. It wasn't a bad story, but it wasn't a good story. It was a story. It had enough plot holes and errors and continuity problems, in my opinion, that that kind of neutralized all the good stuff that it did, like the plague aliens, the pocket dimension, the way the ship makes stuff. There was a lot of cool parts to it. The fights were really cool, really energetic. The suspense was good, a little manufactured, like I talked about, but all in all, for every good thing, there was a bad thing, and it was almost parallel. And 3 out of 5 stars. This is a textbook version of what a average story is. This one could be a 5-star though. This one definitely could be a 5-star with a lot of revision and stuff like that, sure, but the potential for 5 stars in this story, it just hasn't been realized yet. And that's my opinion. But don't take my word for it. This is just one man's opinion on an otherwise very gifted author's repertoire of stories. Please click on the link in the description below. Get yourself a copy of Starships and Apocalypse and read it for yourself. Check it out and then come back and tell me, was I right? Was I wrong? Should I be institutionalized? All of them could be right answers. Love to have a conversation about it in the comments section. So please come on back and let's have that conversation. Well, that's going to do it for this one. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, feel free to put them in the comment section below, and I will get back to you as quick as I can. And as always, thanks.